Yes.
All right. In 5, 4, 3.
Hi, everybody. Oh,
I hear you guys.
okay, sorry.
You can't see my hand, probably.
Yeah, I can. I thought you pointed at me. Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So I'll go 5, 4, 3.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are in the middle of a class called How the Bible Fits Together. Last time we were together, we did part of Lesson 9, the silent years, and we are going to finish that up today. If I haven't met you ever before, my name is Lynn Fukutani, and I am the Director of Curriculum here at Bay Hope Church. If you're just joining us, you can watch all the previous videos on our YouTube channel at Bay Hope Church's YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. And there should be a link to the workbook in case you need that and want to do some homework while you're watching the videos. So we left off last week right after the Maccabees took back control over Israel and got their religion back on track, their Judaism back on track. They cleansed the temple from the statue of Zeus that the Greeks had erected, and they got all the pig blood off the altar that the Greeks had sacrificed pigs on. And now there's a group of people in charge called the Hasmoneans. They are descendants of the Maccabees and all in that same family. There were some good Hasmonean leaders, there were some bad Hasmonean leaders. It's a regular Peyton's place of family drama. The son was in charge and he got killed by the brother, so the mom took over. It's just a whole mess. You can read about it. Not in the Bible, though, because it's not in our Protestant Bible. It is in the Catholic Bible in the books of Maccabees, though, if you want to read about it. But that whole Maccabee Hasmonean dynasty lasted until about 63 BC, which is kind of when Rome enters the scene. Now, Rome didn't just all of a sudden come to be. They had been growing their army and moving from Italy eastward toward, the Greece and Mediterranean and all that. And eventually, as you probably know, they basically take over the whole known world. But we're early in their time right now. It's about 63 BC, and General Pompey, a Roman general, is assigned to go work in Syria. So there are skirmishes down in Israel among these Hasmonean leaders, and some of them want to be super conservative, and some of them want to be kind of liberal. Some of them want to make friends with Rome. Some of them hate the Romans, and so there's all these skirmishes going on, and Pompey doesn't want to deal with any of it. So he just comes on in to Jerusalem, goes into the temple, which totally freaks out all the Jews. The traditionalists and the liberals freaks them all out because nobody that isn't a Jewish man is allowed in the temple, and he just helped himself and walked right in. So he basically takes over the place and puts to rest any arguments between these two groups of people. He didn't really damage the temple, but he made it quite known that he didn't really care about the Jews and their religion. So on the throne, though, in Rome is Julius Caesar, who you probably have heard of. He's there, and he ends up, running the world himself. He made friends with a fella in south of Israel in Idumea called Antipater, which is, I think that's a hilarious name because if you translate the Greek, it's against dad is his name. So I don't understand. But anyway, that's his name, Antipater. And so he is going to rule Israel for Julius Caesar, and he's not a very nice fellow. His whole family's not very nice. His son, you also know, his name is Herod the Great, and he is the famous Herod the Great of the Jesus' nativity story. But before he did that, he ruled Israel like it was his own private kingdom. It belonged to Rome, but this guy, Herod the Great, thought he was amazing and ruled the whole place. He went on a building program and built gorgeous buildings. He thought the Jewish temple was so shabby and drab that it needed some sprucing up. He didn't knock it down, but he redid it so much that the footprint of the temple when Herod got done with it was twice the size of the temple that was there before. It was all gold and gorgeous and just a monument to actually himself, because that's how he was. He was highly jealous. His sons, as they got older, he had some of them killed if they had their eye on his throne. He didn't want to give up his throne. He's the same guy during the Nativity story that sends his soldiers out to kill the babies in Bethlehem because he heard there's a king of the Jews that was born there. This is that same guy. He ends up dying a couple years after that of a terrible disease in 4 BC, which, by the way, is how we know Jesus wasn't born in 0 between BC and AD. He wasn't born then. He had to have been born before 4 BC because Herod died in 4 BC, and we know he played a role in Jesus' story. So the dating of Jesus' birth is probably 5 or 6 BC, in case you were wondering. While Herod was redoing the Jewish temple, he didn't totally trust the Jews, and so he built a fortress attached to the temple called the Fortress of Antonia, and that fortress will feature prominently in the book of Acts when we finally get there, and the Apostle Paul, because there will be an uprising in the temple court that has to get squashed, and the Romans are very fast to get to the temple because they're right there. Their fortress is right there attached to the temple, and they whisk Paul away to relative safety. But that's a story for a different time. Herod the Great, though, he, in order to pay for all these wonderful buildings and all these programs he put in place, of course, he taxed the heck out of the people that lived there, the Jews, right? So anyway, so now we have these taxed people who, with a horrible king, and eventually Herod dies. Well, on the throne in Rome, Julius died as well, and his nephew Octavian is in power. His name's also Augustus Caesar. Probably heard of him as well. He becomes the sole leader of Rome, and the Roman Empire by now is huge. And Augustus doesn't really want to have a whole bunch of fighting, so he institutes a policy called Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. It's Latin for the peace of Rome. There will be no unpeace in Rome. There will be no one attacking from outside. There will be no anybody having fights inside Rome. So Rome is huge, so if there's a skirmish up on the border of another nation trying to come in, he'll send his soldiers up to that border to quell that. If there's an insurrection inside the Roman Empire, he can send soldiers to go quell that. There will be peace in my kingdom no matter what, or I will kill you, which sounds oxymoronic, but that's what he does. So in order to get these soldiers from point A to point B quickly to quell these insurrections and these invasions, he had to build roads. So he built these roads, which there's still evidence of these same roads. You can see pictures of them. Google Roman road, and you can see pictures of them. But if you've seen a highway built in your area, you know that they do a layer of this kind of gravel and a layer of this kind of material, and they roll it over with a rolly thing. These Roman roads look just like that. They're layers of these different kinds of material that compact together to make a really strong road. The roads that are in Italy, not all of them, but there's pieces of these ancient 63 BC roads on the ground still. I mean, too bad our roads don't last that long, right? So these roads allowed the troops to move quickly. Instead of going over the mountains, they went around the mountains or through the mountains or whatever. But they could make 20 miles in a day on foot, Roman soldiers. So they were like hopping with all their equipment on and stuff. So the Romans are in charge by the time Jesus comes along, when the New Testament opens. And they don't like them very much then either. They are instrumental in Jesus' death. Pontius Pilate was a Roman. A lot of the kings that are against Jesus, he calls one of them that fox. one of the Herods. They all have the Herod for their name. John the Baptist is killed by a Roman. They figure very prominently in the Bible. So you could go study Roman history if you want to, or just study biblical history. You'll learn plenty about Rome while you're there. So we've been talking about the time between the Testaments, the silent time. And we talked about how God wasn't talking through prophets anymore. There also wasn't a Jewish king on the throne. No more kings of David. Well, God had promised David a long time ago, back in the book of Kings, in Samuel's, that there would always be a king from David's family on the throne. But there hasn't been a king from David's family on the throne for a super long time, more than 400 years, back before Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, we talked about him last week. Nebuchadnezzar in 600 BC finished that king line of David, but God said there'd be one. So where is he? The Jews are wondering, where's this king? Where's God talking to anybody? He's not talking to any of the prophets. Our priesthood is a shambles. They're all in it for the money, and now they're politicians, for heaven's sakes. What is happening? So God is working. He brought this Greek language. Remember the Greek language and the Seleucids and all them? Everybody speaks Greek. What's the New Testament written in? It's written in Greek. Every single person that was alive, that was educated, could read the New Testament documents when they first came out. They could all hear the gospel in a common language from India all the way to Rome. Everybody could understand this language. Everybody could understand the gospel. Hanukkah got restored. The temple worship got restored. If it wasn't for the Maccabees, who knows how long those Greeks would have taken over. But God let them rule the day, and they got their temple worship back on track. Caesar Augustus gave us roads to travel on. How do you think the Apostle Paul and all his friends got around all the Mediterranean basin when they were planting churches? It was on Roman roads. And how did they not get accosted every 5 minutes? Because of Pax Romana. All this stuff that happened before the New Testament opens made it possible for the New Testament to open. Galatians 4:4 says that when the time was right, God brought forth Jesus. And it wasn't before the 400 years, it was after them, because God was busy as all get out, getting the world ready to be ready for Jesus. And when Jesus comes, the people aren't going to know it, but he is their prophet. He says, I only speak what God tells me to say. That's what a prophet does. He is their high priest. The book of Hebrews tells us that Jesus is our great high priest, and he is the king, and he's from the line of David, and he's going to rule forever. Just like that dream statue Nebuchadnezzar had, that kingdom that's going to rule forever, that's Jesus' kingdom. It got instituted the minute he was born, and it's not done yet. It's still in process. But all this stuff that happened between the Testaments makes possible the rest of the Bible, the New Testament, Jesus' arrival, the spread of the gospel. Why you and I know the Bible at all is because of what happened between the Testaments. So the silent time, I don't think it was very silent. It's super cool. My best favorite lesson to teach in this whole course. I hope you join me again next time.